Shri Vishnu Sahasranama, name 766, Pragrahah. Not among the most common names. Among the meanings of Pragrahah is rains. And if I say rains, you can't be sure what I mean. I could mean rains as in water falling from the sky. I could mean reigns as a king ruling over his kingdom. But it's neither of those. It's rains, R-A-I-N-S, rain, water falling from the sky. R-E-I-G-N-S, the king ruling over his kingdom. And R-E-I-N-S, what is used as a strap for controlling horses, particularly horses, can be other animals also, just like it's common, not in this part of India, I'm in South India now, but especially in Rajasthan and Western Gujarat, it's common to see camels controlled by Western Gujarat, other parts of Gujarat also. Camels controlled by reins. So what does it mean that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the reins? Well, the main interpretation of the name that the commentators have given is that graha means to take hold of, to seize. Graha, just like we have the graha in astrology, we have grahas. It means seizes you. The planet exerts an influence over you or controls you. So here pragraha gives the idea of who controls. Prakashanena grihnati iti pragraha. Satyadeva Vasishta. Controls, but in a special way, an excellent way, unique way. The way an animal is controlled by reins is different to the way that a cow or a sheep is controlled by driving with a stick, or the way a child is controlled by the parent. So it's a unique way. Not every animal can be controlled by reins. Just the other day I saw in the field next to the house I'm staying, someone he had a young pig, a piglet, tied up with the, not exactly on the reins, on the string, but although the cows and bulls, they're used to and being led by a rope, but for the pig, they don't like to, I've seen before, they don't like to be tied up. They really, really hate it. So he controls he's a controller, but this refers to a particular type of control. It's a type of control in which, if we can, just like I was saying, a pig doesn't like to be, you can't control a pig with reins. You can control a horse, but it requires a bondage of trust between the controller and the controlled. The animal will agree to be controlled by the reins. The animal requires to be trained. And particularly if one captures a wild horse, then it's really a hard job to control it. Although if from a young age the horse is trained, then if it's a domesticated horse, which most horses in the world are, it's a domesticated horse and is trained from the beginning, and then becomes much easier to control. And it also depends upon an understanding. When you pull the rein like this, the horse knows what to do, or pull it. And it's also accompanied by verbal instructions, and sometimes by also the horseman will use his foot having spurs on the boots is not very nice but sometimes they use that to get the horse really galloping. It's quite painful for the horse. And then also by hand movements also. And usually a good relationship between the horse and the jockey or the horseman. Not every horseman is a jockey. There'll be some affection and trust between the horseman and the horse. But sometimes, especially if the horse is thoroughbred, highly strung, it's quite a job to control. And even with an experienced jockey, a really highly strung thoroughbred racehorse especially, they can sometimes be pretty stroppy. So what does this mean in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Well, immediately we think of Krishna as the chariot driver of Arjuna, because the chariot driver means there wasn't a diesel engine in the chariot. It's pulled by horses, and Krishna was controlling the horses. And the commentators, they say, here's one of the commentators, Partha Saratinanena Sadascha Eva Rashibhihi Pragrahyate Yata Tat Syat Pragrahah Samudahyataha. That just as Krishna was controlling the horses by the reins, he was also controlling Arjuna. Similarly, Baladev Vidyabhushan puts it is quite a different meaning, that he is accepted by Arjuna as his charioteer. So that's quite a different meaning, that he is accepted. Grahan, that's another similar word from the same root. Grahan, to accept. Parashara Bhatta, continuing to, in this series of names, describe about Krishna, that the chariot, there's the rati, or the person who is the person on the chariot, and the sarati, the charioteer, the accompanying person. Who goes on the chariot is more important than the charioteer. Just like if the president of the country comes, the car is driven, and the car is in the control of the driver, which we might think, well, he's the most important because he's controlling, but he's doing so as a service to the president. And we don't say, oh, the president arrived, and we don't give the name of the car driver, although the car driver has controlled the car to bring the president. So it might seem as if he's in control of the president. But actually in this case, Krishna was in control of Arjuna, not round the other way. In one sense, yes, because we hear in Bhagavad Gita, Senayo ubayo madhe ratam sthapya mechuta. Arjuna tells Krishna, place my chariot in the midst of the two armies. So it appears that Arjuna is in control, but as will shortly be seen, he wasn't in control of his mind, and Krishna brought Arjuna's mind under control by bringing it under the control of Krishna, by Krishna's instructions. One of the better known statements in the Upanishads, it's a famous example, which Srila Prabhupada also quotes in his Bhagavad Gita as it is, and elsewhere, refers to the analogy of the passenger on the chariot and the reins and the horses and so on. So that comes in two verses, but I'll just quote one of them here. Atmanang ratinang vidhi, sharirang ratam evacha, buddhing tu sarating vidhi, mana pragrahyamevacha. The human body is compared to a chariot. The soul, the Atma, is the jiva. The body is the chariot. The mind is acting as the reins. And the charioteer who holds the reins, mana pragrama evacha, is like the mind is holding the reins. In the Madhva Sampradaya commentary, they say that the mind, the presiding deity of the mind, is Lord Rudra. Of course, we have in our Gauriya, or derived from Pancharatra, that Aniruddha is the controller of the mind. But anyway, there are different Pancharatras, and Lord Rudra, and Vishnu is called Pragrahah because he is the indwelling soul, Antaryami for Rudra, and in this way he controls Rudra's mind, and Rudra controls the mind of others. Another nuance on this is given by Shankaracharya, that we should be very thankful to Lord Sri Krishna if he takes charge of it. We should pray, take charge of my mind. My mind is out of control. Let me surrender my mind to you. Bhajahure mana Srinandanandana abhaya charanara vindare. We surrender our mind in the service of Krishna, and this way the otherwise uncontrolled mind becomes controlled. We want Krishna control our mind, become the reins to control the mad, wild horses of our mind. He can control everything. He does control everything in one sense, but he gives independence to the jivas. Limited independence. But that misuse of independence is our misfortune, or that causes our misfortune. So better to become under his control. Better to be a domesticated, cared for horse rather than a wild horse without any reins. Shankara quotes, Dhavato Vishaya Aranye Durdanta Indriya Vajinaha Tat Prasadena Asmineva Badnati Iti Va Pragravat Pragrahah. He controls everything. But our mind and senses are out of control, wandering here and there. Like wild horses. We can give the example of wild horses. Very difficult to catch, very difficult to control. Even if you catch them, very difficult to tame. He can bring them under control. He's the expert horseman. There are some people, they have a natural aptitude for dealing with animals. Just like some people, naturally they're a musician. Someone naturally they're a mathematician. Someone is naturally an excellent cook. Someone is naturally very good at dealing with children. And someone is very naturally, animals tend to trust them and like them. And they can control such people. Even wild horses, they're more likely to submit to such a person. So we pray to him, rein us in. That's an English saying, rein us in. Pull someone, pull us. We're running away from Krishna. Pull us in, pull us in. Because when our mind turns in devotion to him, then we don't have to strive to control our mind and senses. Such a difficult job. Anyone who's tried knows it's such a difficult job to control the mind and senses. But if we submit ourselves to him, then you take control. Engage our mind and senses in his service, and he will take control. But we surrender to Him, and He takes charge of us. As long as we're trying to be independent, then we'll have a wild mind. It's a contradictory attempt to try to remain independent of Krishna and at the same time have a controlled mind. That's what the yogis try to do. That's why it's such a difficult process. They're trying to do something which, by its very nature, it doesn't work. You've got the wrong formula here. The formula is to engage the mind in Krishna's service. The not engaging of the mind in Krishna's service is the root cause of the uncontrolled mind. So to try to control it by the mind, to try to control the mind requires the use of the mind, but we can't control the mind because the mind is uncontrolled, and then you get into a vicious regress. Control the mind with the uncontrolled mind. What will you do? How will you do that? And then go to another aspect of the uncontrolled mind. But it doesn't work. Simply surrender to Krishna, Krishna takes charge. So that's the program. Manmana bhava mad bhaktaha. Krishna tells us, always think of me, become my devotee. But that's the problem, because our mind is not controlled. We don't think of Krishna. Because we don't think of Krishna, our mind is not controlled. So where do we go? How do we get out of this? And then we pray to Krishna through the medium of Guru and Gurus. Simply by our logical machinations, we can't get out of this conundrum. But simply we pray to Krishna. Krishna, take charge of my life. And Krishna will be very happy to accept it. That's another meaning given by Shankara, Graha, to accept. That he accepts, Krishna accepts what is offered to him with love. And we know very well, Patrang Pushpang Palang Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Upahritam Ashnami Prayatat Manaha. Krishna says that he doesn't use the word, the verb he uses in this verse to refer to himself is not to accept, but to eat. I eat it. If anyone gives me fruit, leaf, flower, or water with love, I eat it, Krishna says, which means he accepts it, obviously. He's very happy to accept such simple offerings if it's offered with love. And in commenting on this verse, the commentators extend that to say that Krishna accepts the loving offerings of his devotees, but what about people who offer prayers to Allah, or people who offer prayers to God according to the Christian tradition, or even people who offer to demigods? Whatever's offered is ultimately meant for him. And he hears the prayers he hears everything anyway, but he hears the prayers of his devotees, however they're offered. There may be some misconceptions, there may be different rituals, there may be a somewhat different philosophical approach, just like we have in the Vaishnava Sampradayas. We have the Sharya Shariri Bhav Vishishtadvaita of Sri Ramanuja. We have the Shuddha Dvait of Madhvacharya. We have the Swabhavik Bheda philosophy of Nimbarka. We have the Shuddhadvaita of Vallabhacharya and Achintya Bheda of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they're all different philosophic systems, but they all aim at Krishna. And there may be some disagreements between the followers of those systems also. But they're all aiming at Krishna, and Krishna accepts their offerings. And of course, yayata mang prapadyante tangs tataiva bhajami aham. To the degree that we offer something to the degree of love we have, Krishna will accept it. ultimately Krishna wants to see our love, not exactly which philosophic system we go through to approach him. So all kinds of people worship him. They may not even know they're worshipping him. They may even deny him. They may say, no, we're worshipping Shiva. We're not worshipping Krishna. But it's ultimately meant for him. Yepi anyadevata bhakta yajante shadayan vita tepi mameva kaunteya yajantya vidhi purvakam. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, whatever is offered to different demigods is ultimately meant for me, but it's unknowingly or improperly offered through others. So he's cognizant of everything. Even those who blaspheme him, he's cognizant of that. Satyadeva Vashishta explains many names, as we have seen, in terms of Vishnu's interaction with the universe, which is very fitting because he is overseeing the mode of goodness, the maintenance of the universe. So he explains that this name, Pragrahah, means his exceptional control of everything in the universe. So that fits with Satyadeva Vashishta's several explanations of several names in terms of how Vishnu interacts with the universe. Now, if we go back to name 742, Bhaktavatsala. I gave an extended series of talks on that name. And one of the interpretations from the commentators was that he goes to the devotees who make offerings to him through yajna. He accepts what they offer. From that commentary, I'll flash back and give a little reading. He goes to, or he nourishes, this is a different understanding of the name Pragrahah. Pragrahah in terms of accepting. He accepts and nourishes those brahmanas who perform sacrifices and offerings with great devotion, their minds being dedicated to him. So going back to the commentary, which I read before, on Bhaktavatsala, about he who accepts the offerings made in sacrifice. This is from the commentary on the name Bhaktavatsala by Sri Satya Sandha Yatiraj. One meaning he gives is cooked rice or food for the term bhakta. So we have Bhaktavatsala. So then he explains that to mean he who goes to the devotees who make offerings to him through sacrifice. In this regard, we can remember the account of Raghunandan Thakur of Srikhanda, the holy place Srikhanda near to Katwa in West Bengal, the place of Narahari Sarkar. Raghunandan Thakur, as a young boy, it happened that his father sometimes had to go away from the house for doing some work. So when he saw the boy is old enough, still a young boy, he told Raghunandan that I'm going to be away at midday, so you take the food that your mother has offered and you offer it to the deity. So Raghunandan said, okay, you offer to the deity, and then what happens? And then the deity, if you offer to Krishna, then you expect he'll eat. So he's a young boy. He offered the food. He went inside. He did all the mantras as his father told him, rang the bell, and then he sat and waited. He was sitting there, and he said to Krishna, the deity, so eat. I offered it, so you should eat. Krishna's laughing a little. Eat, eat. And by this young boy's insistence, cow, cow, eat, eat. Then, by his loving insistence, the deity, Krishna, felt obliged he had to eat. So when Raghunandan came out, there was nothing left on the plate. So when his father came back and said, okay, now I can take prasad. Oh, there's nothing left. Krishna ate it all. And the father was little doubtful. This happened 2 or 3 times, and then he thought, I'm going to check this out. So one time his father pretended to go out for work, but actually he waited behind the curtain as his son was offering. And he looked inside the curtain and he saw Krishna was actually eating at the insistence. Every time the boy would say, eat, eat, eat. You must eat, otherwise my father will be angry with me. He told me to offer this to you. So then the father understood that his son is a better devotee than himself. Or at least Krishna was reciprocating with him. At Alvarnath, near to Puri, there's a similar narration. However, when the deity Alvarnath started to eat the food, then the local priests who were offering it weren't very happy. They said, well, what will happen to us? And as a result, he destroyed them all. Krishnadatta Bharadvaj says that the meaning of the name Pragrahah is one who accepts or receives a prakrisht. Prakito graha svikaro yasa iti pragraha. His acceptance is unique, exceptional, exalted. He accepts, Krishna accepts the surrender of his devotee. If his devotee surrenders to him once, Krishna is ready to take charge. It's amazing. If we've been in this material existence since time immemorial, forgetting Krishna, avoiding Krishna, maybe even sometimes, I hate to think of it, but it may have been even rude and offensive and blasphemous to Krishna. But even so, after millions and billions and trillions and quadrillions and zillions of lifetimes of turning away from Krishna, if we once turn around and say, Krishna, please accept me, and Krishna will accept us. We just take it for granted. Yeah, if we pray to Krishna, Krishna will listen. But why should he listen? After we've been so rude to him, so unkind to him, so exalted. We shouldn't take it for granted. We shouldn't take it for granted. Everything we do, if we really want to please Krishna, if we really have the motive of offering everything to Krishna, then Krishnate kila cheshta. Everything should be done for him. Sri Krishna prityartham. In ritualistic ceremonies, we say, Sri Krishna prityartham. We're offering this just for the love of Krishna, that's all. Nothing else. Not, well, Krishna, accept this, and by the way, I need something in exchange. Here we have the list. Not like that. Sri Krishna prityartham. Let us do everything for Krishna's pleasure. Krishna will be very, very happy to accept it, even though he has unlimited numbers. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. He has unlimited numbers of devotees who are fully satisfying him in all respects. And what will we offer? A little rice and dal and patram pushpam palantayam. We can't cook as well as Mother Yashoda or Rohini Mata or Sita Devi or Radha. We can't cook like them, but we do our best. We pray. When we go in the kitchen, we pray, Lakshmi, Radharani, please enter me so I can make something suitable for your lover. But what does Krishna need with us? He doesn't need us. It's like the Christian idea and the Muslim idea. They throw you in hell forever. Well, maybe we deserve that. But fortunately, Krishna is more kind. I mean, how would we treat someone if someone for years and years and years is just harassing us, or we're trying to make friends with them and they're just ignoring us and being nasty to us? You'd give up at some point, right? We'd give up. But he doesn't give up. That's his amazing mercy. We should remember that. Pragrahah, his unique acceptance of us wholeheartedly. He's ready to accept us. He's not that, okay, all right. Wholehearted acceptance. Of course, there is the stage of sadhana. It's like a testing stage. We have to go through purification. But Srila Prabhupada said that, if the devotees, if someone who's an accepted devotee offers someone, here, I'm offering you a servant, Krishna has to accept. Therefore we pray to Radha, you please accept. You accept me, you introduce me to Krishna. If I go to Krishna, Krishna may be very strict. But if I go through you, you will be very merciful. One more meaning, graha. I mentioned the planet. Specifically the planets that have an influence on human minds and on events in the world. There are the Navagraha, the 9 planets, and they're specifically, these are the planets which have influence on the universe. By the mercy of Vishnu, they are given a job to do, and by doing that job, that's their devotional service, they serve him and they become purified. So one reason he's called Pragrahah is because he made these Navagrahas as the most important deities in influencing the rest of the universe. He gave them their position. Shri Pragrahah Bhagavan ki jai. Shri Vishnu Sahasranama ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Dante nithaya churnakang padaya nipatya kritva chakakushatameta ravimi. Hey sadhava sakala eva vihaya durat. Gauranga chandra charane kurutanuragaha. Parivadatu jano yatatava nanumukaro navayang vicharayamaha. Hari rasamadiramadati matta. Bhuvi vilutama nartama nirvishama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. When preparing talks on Sri Vishnu Sahasranama, I look up various things in various shastras, in the Sanskrit dictionary, and meditate on it for some time and make notes. But Krishna is unlimited, and inevitably there's so many more things that could be said about every name. And sometimes in the course of the talk, some thoughts come up which I hadn't thought of before, which are not in my notes. And sometimes after the talk also, which is why sometimes I have an appendix talk like this one now. Now, when I was speaking on the name Pragrahah, 2 different thoughts came in my mind which I hadn't made a note of, which I started to discuss, but I didn't finish. That's why it's good to make notes. So one of the things, this was just a side point at the beginning. I said that Pragrahah means rains, and I explained there's rain spelled in 3 different ways, meaning 3 different things. But I didn't make the point, which is really a side point, that in Sanskrit, when you say a word, you get the word. There's only, for one pronunciation, there's one spelling, although the word may have different meanings. Just like the word Atma can have various meanings. It can mean body, mind, soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's used respectfully in among sadhu kinds of people in Hindi up to the present day to mean a person. So that was the small point I wanted to make, which I didn't make. Then another one, which is more in the description of the name Pragrahah. I gave the idea of, again near the beginning, of a horse can be tamed and is trained by the master. Usually if there's one master or one rider on the one who rides on the horse regularly, then it becomes easier for the horse to understand. If the same commands are given by someone else, may not understand it properly. So I gave the idea that the horse responds to the commands. He knows what when the master pulls the rein this way or that way, or with a certain intensity, usually or often accompanied by some oral sound also. The horse knows what to do and fully cooperates with full trust in the horseman and submits himself to him. The horse, I've seen, sometimes when you come near a horse and the horse becomes very happy and neighs in happiness. Oh, they're coming. But why the horse submits, knowing that it's in my... Of course, the horse doesn't have a big philosophical ability, but the horse knows that this is my master, he cares for me, he's affectionate to me, my well-being is in his hands, and he doesn't think I have to go somewhere else, do something else, or go to anyone else. He's maintained. Unquestioningly, the horse just goes on with his life in that way. He doesn't think of having another way of life or running away or any such thing. So in the same way, we fully surrender to Krishna with the full faith that Krishna is looking after us. Whatever he orders us to do, that is for our benefit. Even the horse, some horses are trained for war, for battle. They'll run into enemy fire. Of course, in the days of, that was in the old days, and when they brought in tanks, that became fairly, well, pretty much useless, having cavalry. Cavalry used to mean troops on horses. Nowadays it means tanks. A bit of an outdated word. But the unquestioning obedience with the full faith that whatever my master, if the master's taking me into the battle, into enemy gunfire, then the horse will go. He has such faith in the master. So in the same way, we should have that kind of faith in Krishna and allow Krishna to control us. What's going on with the horse is under the control of the reins, which are under the control of the horseman, and the horse allows himself to be manipulated with full faith and confidence that this is my master, I'll do what he says, unquestioning. So in the same way, we should be like a horse for Krishna and know how to respond to Krishna's prodding, Krishna's signs. That takes a lot of spiritual advancement to be able to see Krishna's signs in everything. That's why we study Shastra, to become familiar with Krishna and what Krishna wants us to do, and why we do sadhana, so we can become a good horse of Krishna and be figuratively, or maybe actually, so that we respond, a sold-out servant That's all. With full faith and full love and full affection. And in this way, Krishna becomes very pleased with us also, just like a horseman has affection for his horse and wants to see his horse is well looked after. So that is the perfection of Bhakti Yoga, to be linked with Krishna, to respond to his commands, to know what he wants us to do, when he says this, what we want to do, and to respond and to do it. So that's another thought for Pragrahah. Hare Krishna.